Monday Night Sports Talk on the airnetwork.net and 94.1 FM in Huntingdon. Welcome to the first day of deer camp. Hey, if you have nothing better to do, even if you do, give us an hour. Give us a buzz at 814-506-0609 as we kibitz about local, also regional and national sports tonight, namely Penn State, Pitt, also the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Penguins, and a whole lot more. Joining me, speaking of deer camp, a man who doesn't make that travel very often, if he does at all. He's like me, pretty much would like to watch it on TV, I guess, is Dave Shannon. He's joining me tonight. Dave, how you doing, and how'd you make out at camp this week?
Did not go to camp. Probably should have, because I was out doing some late trimming of shrubberies and things, and boy, did I mess my back up.
Oh, did you really?
My. Saturday, I could hardly move.
Oh, man.
And on Sunday, a leave was my best friend.
Oh, so. Yeah, that's some good stuff, man. That's like not even prescribed. You can get that over the counter for the most part. Hey, speaking of camp, you would normally be fishing this time of year. I imagine the weather, which hasn't changed drastically, still maybe some good fishing left up in the Erie area or maybe wherever you might be fishing.
Sure. As a matter of fact, going to be in that area on Wednesday and Thursday of this week.
All right. Yeah, because I was really thinking about it today of getting on the Juniata River, and I might just do that tomorrow after some appointments. So that might just be something I'll do. Get that last glimpse of fishing on the river before it gets real cold, because I was just talking with somebody jokingly today. I said, well, the fish are about ready to feed and getting ready to hibernate. He says, well, they don't really hibernate. I said, doesn't really care because, in December, I'm not going out there anyhow.
Well, needless to say, their food needs aren't quite as much when that temperature of the water gets really cold. Yeah. They don't really need to eat that much.
Not moving as quickly either. They're sort of like men, like we like to hibernate in the wintertime. But anyhow, here it is, Monday Night Sports Talk. Give us a call, 814-506-0609. Got lots to talk about tonight. The Steelers, of course, the Pitt Shocker over Miami. Some of the changes in college coaching. Of course, the top 4 or 5 teams, which has, it's changed drastically. And the Penguins, who, by the way, take to the ice tonight. Let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers, though, Dave. Chad States often talks about the Steelers playing down to their opponent. Last night, they had the Green Bay Packers as their opponent. We talked about young man Hundley, the quarterback for Green Bay, taking over in the absence of Aaron Rodgers. He didn't look all that bad, but I don't know. Did the Steelers win that game, or did Green Bay, first of all, lose that game? Because, man, it was so tight throughout the entire game.
Or did Green Bay play up to the Steelers?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question to ask.
Right.
I will say one thing, though, and this goes back to one of the reasons that I don't like Butler as the defensive coordinator, because the first half is what it is, but they came out in the second half and they just had Hundley so confused.
Yeah.
He just didn't know what to do. They weren't gaining yards. Everybody looks at that play, or that series, where Green Bay had recovered an intercepted pass and ended up having great field position and then tried the long field goal because the Steeler defense just absolutely shut them down. And it was, and then in the fourth quarter, Hundley comes out and has an excellent finish to the game. So, the interesting question to me is perhaps Green Bay played up to their competition, but for anyone that really, I don't know why this never comes up in the discussions, because I see a lot of discussions about this on all the networks, be it the NFL network,
right,
ESPN, wherever it might be, and they start to talk about the Steelers and who they are and what they are. I never hear anyone talk about, have you looked at their schedule? They've actually had one of the easiest schedules, primarily because the AFC North is not that good this year.
Yeah.
And second of all, the teams that they've had to play outside of that, fortunately for them, they got Minnesota early.
Yeah.
Because Minnesota seems to be the real deal here as we move forward. Although after watching them play on Thanksgiving Day, Case Keenum is what he is, and he's not the kind of quarterback that takes you to a Super Bowl.
Right, he's not going to be able to get them there. But hey, getting back to last night's game, one of the problems I did have, and maybe you saw this too, Dave, is their receivers were really running wild in the secondary against the Steelers defense. Here again, questionable things that were happening in our defensive backfield, guys getting open. Of course, obviously the score being so close indicates that the Packers were staying with the Steelers throughout most of the game until we got into that fourth quarter with some amazing stuff from Antonio Brown and, of course, Boswell. We'll talk about that. But your thoughts on that defense again, man? It sometimes looks like Swiss cheese to me. I don't know.
Well, I have to agree with you, although, and Chris Collinsworth is one of those guys that sometimes I can just do without.
Yeah, right.
But you know what? The guy knows football. And he pointed out one of the big touchdown plays that Green Bay had. And one of the things that people have been talking about is lack of communications within the Steeler defense. And what you had were, I forget the two players, but they're dropping back.
Mitchell.
And you've got a guy down the middle, and you've got a guy going down the sideline. Well, the two can either, because you don't know if the sideline guy might do a post pattern or not. So, you have the option of moving into the middle of the field. The defender took the turn toward the middle of the field. The guy's running down the sidelines, and he keeps going down the sidelines.
Right.
And he ends up scoring a touchdown. That's a lack of communication, somehow not being able to tell the guy who had the coverage over the middle, which he had good coverage, didn't yell whatever it takes to let that guy know, go to the sideline.
But
because that just left him, he was like 15 yards down the field. Nobody was going to get him.
Yeah, you got to think at a packed stadium like that, though, too, it might be hard to communicate. I'm sure they're
it's
probably
the kind of thing, though, at this point in the season, Greg, you got to be able to know how to do that, and that's why the Steelers get trashed. When it comes to talking about the defense, that was a case of lack of communications there. And, once again, this goes back to your defensive coordinator. Butler has to have those guys ready and raring to go. And talk about the coordinators again. I'll do my weekly Todd Haley bash.
I'm waiting for that.
Because once again, the offense comes out, and they go into no huddle,
right,
and they look fantastic in no huddle,
right,
and then they go back to being the team that wants to do huddle and take their time and blah blah blah, and then they look like garbage.
Well, but through it all, Big Ben had a half decent day yesterday.
Oh, he did. He did. Despite the two interceptions.
Oh yeah, despite those interceptions, he had a great a day. Of course, here again, you and I have talked, and we've talked ad nauseum on Monday Night Sports Talk about him targeting Antonio Brown. I am so glad that yesterday those guys connected, and of course, they have the greatest friendship, on and off the field. And I think, again, if you're talking about communications, they communicate well because it came down to several key passes to Brown yesterday. And that was the difference in that game, obviously, so that we could get down there and Boswell could kick that 53-yard field goal. Going forward, though, Dave, as that game ended, rather close. Too close for me, what I'm saying, because that's one of those games that it's going to be pivotal. They've got to win. Now, this week, again, they have Cincinnati. And prior to the game, because Tony Dungy is a good friend of Mike Tomlin, they actually talked a little bit about the upcoming season, which usually Tomlin doesn't tip his cap. But already he's telling Tony that there's that possibility in the back of his mind that, yes, we will get to the Super Bowl. Yes, we have to take on New England, but there's a chance that we might be able. So he's thinking down the road already, despite what we've always thought in the past, that these guys don't ever look ahead.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that is what they refer to as coach speak, that they don't want to admit that, that they are thinking ahead. You cannot know what your schedule is without at least you've got that circled. It's in the back of your mind, and the closer you get to it, the more it becomes prominent in your mind. Yes, week to week, you're concerned about your opposition. And everything that you're talking about this week with your team has to be centered around what's coming up with Cincinnati in the upcoming game.
Oh, yeah.
That being said, you still have that in the back of your mind. So, and I think that's the case of me sitting down to talk to a former coach and he's just trying to be honest with them.
Yeah, and they're good friends too.
You know,
yeah.
Because you have to take a look at it. But you know, one of the things you had mentioned about Ben having a good game
right
last night, he would have had an even better game. Can you believe how many passes were dropped by someone not named Antonio Brown?
Yeah, and you know, it was not just him, but I saw one right in the hands of Jesse James. I'm like, wow.
Oh my, yeah,
you know,
that was a first down play.
Yeah, so I'm not really certain. You know, here again, I can't make excuses for these guys. They're professional. Obviously, there are things.
If it hits you in the hands, you should catch it.
But you know, there are situations when you're going over the middle, like James did. You hear footsteps, man. Seriously. I mean, you're already looking downfield before you get the ball, and I think what he was doing, he anticipated the ball right in his hands, and he dropped it. And Brown did basically the same thing. It seems like the easiest catches that go to Brown are the hardest ones for him to hold on to. But then you have that last catch of the evening where he's kind of tapping the line and holding the ball at the same time. I mean, it's incredible. But there again, they're professionals. And any given Sunday, it could happen. Now, Martavius Bryant, of course, had probably his most productive game since returning from that year-long drug suspension that cost him the entire last season. He finished
basically because Juju was out.
That's what I'm saying, because Juju was out. So Bryant finished with 99 total yards, his first touchdown since week 2. Juju's out, has that hamstring problem. Have you heard if he's coming back anytime soon, or does that take a long time to rehab from when you get a hamstring like that?
It nags you, depending on the severity of it. It'll nag him through, you know, whatever, the end of the season and the postseason.
Okay.
But he's going to eventually get to a point where he plays, and it'll probably be this week instead of some week down the road.
Yeah.
You know, they're just, hamstrings are a real pain as long as you don't tear it. It's just the kind of thing that continues to bug you. You take you bandage it up, you tape it up, you try to give some support, you know, maybe wear a little bit of a brace, you know, to try to protect the hamstring area.
Right.
And, you know, that's pretty much the way that goes. Like I say, it stays with you. That'll bother him till the season's over, no matter where it ends.
That's true.
And then he'll start to heal for good after that.
Right.
Because it's a multi-month kind of thing for a hamstring to heal.
Yeah, and I imagine it's like an ankle injury. You know, once you get it, it stays with you probably. I mean, we had a situation in high school. Andrew Hootie with that bad ankle last year, came through the season this year, of course, made it through the Huntingdon Bearcats season, as well as Ian Border, if you remember, had some ankle issues as well. And it kind of nags you, as you said. Here's something that raised the eyebrows. I talked about it a moment as, of course, Tony Dungy and Tomlin, who are friends, were talking, you know, pre-game. And Tomlin said he believes the team can win the Super Bowl, and allowed that there's a part of him thinking about that New England visit to Heinz Field on December 17th. Tomlin said, quote, "We've just got a good football team. I've got a great deal of confidence in them. Everybody in America knows it's a big game. We couldn't deny it if we wanted to," end quote. So here again, they're looking forward to New England. They are 9-2. The Steelers are now 9-2. I think there's going to be a clash of the Titans, Dave, and then, you know, there are going to be so many playoff implications, although we know the Steelers are pretty much bound to go there now.
I think the one thing, and I've seen this, and I think I talked about it last week, that the one time the Steelers were able to beat New England was because they pressured Brady constantly.
Oh, yeah.
The Steelers have been much better in pressuring quarterbacks this year than they have been for a while. And I think no better example, whatever the playbook was for the second half against the Cincinnati Bengals earlier in the season, is the playbook that they have to go to against New England and Brady.
Yeah.
You have to put that kind of pressure on him, because as good as he is, he's still really subject to having trouble when there is pressure on him. So that's what the Steelers need to do for that game. But hey, let's look at it this way. They got good practice coming up because they're going to take on the Bengals,
yeah,
right?
You were talking about that big Bengals win 29-14 back on October 22nd. So, you know, but one of the things, and I just chuckled a little bit as you were talking about Brady, because finally he looks like a 40-year-old. I saw some highlights of him today as he was scrambling through a fumble, and he just wasn't getting there, Dave. You know, I mean, granted, he's probably got a pretty good arm, but he ain't got no speed at all. So he's 40 years old, and it'll be telling probably when we see them down the road here in December as we, look forward to some more dynamic games for the Steelers as they defeated Green Bay, by the way. I said a slight edge yesterday. It had sort of my heart in my throat throughout the last, I'd say, 30 seconds of the game.
I thought they were headed to overtime.
I thought so,
to be
too.
honest.
I really thought it there. I thought, no way Bagwell was going to hit this thing. What was it, 53 yards?
Yep, yep. It tied the Heinz Field record for longest field goal.
Amazing as the Steelers win 31-28. Meanwhile, they take on Cincinnati Monday Night Football. My God, I'm watching all these games in prime time. If you've not heard about the Steelers in America, well, you should be paying attention. But then again, Dave, they keep saying all these fans have left the NFL. I didn't see anybody giving up their seats in Pittsburgh last night, man. I mean, I just looked like, wasn't anything open there. I imagine I could have walked in and maybe found a seat or two, but maybe people are coming back.
TV ratings are not as good, but, one of the things you have to realize, and yesterday, the two games that were on, CBS had New England. Yeah. The New England game, which was boring because they're beating up on Miami.
Exactly.
The other game that was on was the Eagles, and they were beating up on Chicago, which I stayed and watched the game because of Monday Night Sports Talk and knowing that the Eagles come up in our discussions.
Right.
But if I didn't have any, affiliation to that, I'd have been off. I started to watch hockey anyway. I still fit in some, I'm watching the Islanders play, and it's like I could care less about the Islanders.
Yeah.
But that hockey game was a lot more exciting than watching the Eagles beat up on Chicago or New England beat up on Miami.
I got to admit, the reason I'm watching these Eagles games rather closely is I'm among a lot of Eagles fans in this area. This is sort of like the line of demarcation, and it goes even deeper once you get on the other side of Mifflin County, where you find all those Eagles fans. But having said that, I just wanted to watch because I thought, well, let's say the Eagles finally get beat by somebody like Chicago. Don't say it can't happen, because ask the Steelers if that could happen. You know what I mean? So anyhow, so I'm watching that Eagles game, and I'm seeing, you're right, it started getting really boring. But I'm like, well, how bad can they beat these guys? And how many guys are going to score on this field, for the Eagles? And are they going to set some records, obviously, with Wentz in the backfield? So I did watch that, but hear it again. And we often do touch on these Eagles, and I'm not going to belabor the point tonight. But on Monday Night Sports Talk, all I can say is they're having a fantastic season. Wouldn't it be wild if the Steelers and the Eagles show up in the Super Bowl this year? I think that would be the capper to a great season, as far as I'm concerned.
And as much of a Steelers fan as I am, I would be I would be picking the Eagles if that would end up being the game, because the one thing that the Eagles don't get a lot of credit about, because Carson Wentz is and he's not trying to, he just is, because of how good he is this year. He's the headline grabber.
Oh, no doubt.
Not many people talk about how good Philadelphia's defense is. And if you watched that game yesterday, you had to come away with that, realizing how good their defense is. They were making a big deal because next Sunday night's game's going to be Eagles-Seahawks. Well, guess what? That's not going to be much of a game. It's going to be in Seattle, but that's the only draw to the thing. But I think the Eagles handle Seattle with no problem.
Oh, I don't think that's a problem. I would love to see right now, as the season moves forward, really who I'd like to see play, and it'd be sort of like the NFC Super Bowl, if you will. It might be the Eagles and the Saints, because I'm thinking, my God, that should probably turn out to be a half-decent game.
Unless you watched yesterday the Rams and the Saints.
Oh, there's another one.
The Rams took it to the Saints yesterday.
They did indeed. And that young quarterback, Goff, that they have.
Jared Goff.
Oh, man, he's fantastic. Hey, staying in Pennsylvania, staying in Pittsburgh, Dave, let's go back a couple of days to another Pittsburgh team that really shocked the nation. They shocked the world. They changed the texture of college football forevermore, as all the fans were singing Sweet Caroline, and they were just having a hell of a time at Heinz Field, because they were like, this is amazing. We just toppled the number 2 team on Friday, November 24th, 2017, and they had a quarterback who, by the way, was greeted by the fans in the student section. And he's only a rookie, never even heard of the kid. Talk about your thoughts on that Pittsburgh game where they stunned number 2 Miami. The Panthers rock.
Yeah, I think one of the things you were dealing with, we're just kind of talking about that, looking ahead. I think Miami came into Pittsburgh and it was like, this is a formality.
Yeah,
we're going to play this game, go back. We're going to be undefeated.
Hey, if you remember, though, I don't want to spoil it, but I did talk to Chad and I talked to Jimmy this week, and I said, dudes, remember last Monday night, I said to Chad, well, what if Pitt upset? And he said, oh, that's not going to happen. See, everybody discounted it, and not that I truly believed that they would, but I said, what if? What happens if Pitt upsets Miami? And now it came to fruition, and we see, and we'll talk about that top 4, top 5. Pittsburgh really, I don't know, maybe Narduzzi can hold on to his job another year. What do you think?
Boy, I don't know. The one thing that's got to be disappointing for the Pitt fans is knowing that you have a win like that against Miami, but also knowing that you're not in a bowl game anywhere because you didn't get 6 wins.
That was your bowl game, though, huh? I mean, really, it was.
Well, yeah, but, the bottom line is coaches get judged on those kind of things, and for recruiting purposes, too.
Oh, yeah.
You got to show these young guys, it's like, hey, we're going to put in a lot of hard work. We don't have an easy schedule, and the reward at the end is going to be a trip to a bowl game. Well, he can't go out and say that to any of his or anybody he wants to recruit at this point because the Panthers came up short. Yeah, I mean, he can point to consecutive years of knocking off the number 1 team.
Yeah,
doing it to Auburn not Auburn, but Clemson last year.
Last year, yeah.
And then this year against Miami, Miami wasn't number 1 at the time, but they were right there.
They were number 2
in the mix.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, the Panthers, by the way, last year, if I remember, they went to postseason for the first time. I think that was since 2007, or maybe they missed it this year, 2007, and they were 5-7 last year, as I recall. But having said that, this Pickett kid, this Kenny Pickett. After all these quarterback changes, Dave, is he the quarterback now? I mean, you saw his performance. I mean, is this the kid that they probably overlooked and should have started from the get-go, beginning of the season?
Well, typically what you'll find, and I'm sure Narduzzi is going to run his program like everybody does, and you'll come out and you'll have your spring practice, you'll have your spring game.
Right.
And that's going to tell you who's going to be the leading candidate to be the quarterback for next year.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have your preseason when the team gets together and starts to practice. And once again, there's still going to be a battle for that. So you don't automatically get knighted, if you will, into being the top guy just because you had one really good game. And sometimes teams fall into that problem where a guy comes out and just has an unbelievable game and then ends up being the starter. And then you find out he's not as wonderful as we thought. Yeah. I'm not saying that Pickett can't be that guy.
Oh, no. And guys have good games, bad games. Now, this kid just found out last Monday that he'd start this week. And he was sharp from the beginning, according to his coaches. And if you looked at the sort of the scoreboard and you check some of his stats, the kid was 18 of 29 passes. He had a touchdown where he actually ran for 22 yards right past the Miami bench. And it looked like somebody's going to come out and take him out, but he scored nonetheless. So are you holding out hope for the Pitt program next year, beyond this year, with maybe a couple of recruits, they can turn things around?
Boy, I'll tell you what, it's tough. I mean, to this point, Pat Narduzzi, as much as I like the guy, he seems to be a real solid coach on the sidelines and everything. But
defensive coach.
That being said, what his results are on the field are what counts.
Yep.
And he certainly has not provided the results on the field, and that's ultimately what you become judged upon.
And we'll talk about some of those carousels that occurred over the weekend of those coaches who obviously they were good coaches, but now they're looking for jobs. And some guys, quite frankly, said, hey, I think I'll just take my money, go drink some beers, and go fishing and sit out for a while. Hey, if I was making $5-6 million, I think I'd take a year off too, man. You know what I mean? I mean,
you could, based on our current lifestyles, we could afford to take the rest of our lives off.
Oh my God, yeah. So listen, So Narduzzi is not a part of that carousel this year, but let me talk to you about some of the changes in college football. Dan Mullen was coach of Mississippi State. Chances are he's moving on to maybe Florida now, who lost their coach. Now, we talked about Chip Kelly last week. Looks like Chip took that job at UCLA,
Jimmy.
man. Huh?
Way to go. Jimmy's not with us tonight, but Jimmy Ty hit the nail on the head and put Kelly at UCLA.
Yep.
And that was the first thing I thought of when I saw the headline that Kelly was going to be at UCLA.
I
and
think
it's like,
Chad actually
hey,
did that.
Jimmy did that.
Okay, maybe it was Jimmy, but I thought Chad said, oh, no, he's already on a plane to UCLA when we were kind of speculating there. Now, meanwhile, Kevin Sumlin is out at Texas A&M. Wasn't there very long. And then what was the guy's name that used to be the Wisconsin coach? He went to Arkansas.
Bielsma.
He's out of there now. Jimbo Fisher is maybe thinking about taking a job somewhere other than Florida State, although that's just speculation. Here's the deal, Dave, and we'll get back to Penn State in a minute. Tennessee, they offer a job to Greg Schiano. Remember who was on the Paterno staff at one time and then went on to Rutgers? Well, they offer him the job. I mean, he pretty much had the job. I think he did everything but sign the contract. But they gave him a writ of intention, which basically means we're hiring you. We're going to give you this few $1 million, okay, for a head coaching job. Well, when that hit social media before they could even announce it, all hell broke loose. And then Tennessee grabbed that job offer back. So my feeling is at this point, because one of the things that they said was, listen, this Schiano, and I think it was an excuse, they really didn't want him at Tennessee, not the students or the alums. They wanted a big name. They thought maybe somebody was going to leave like Jimbo Fisher and come up there and take that job. So they pulled the job back yesterday afternoon, all in one day. You think he has a right to sue them for the money that he was going to get?
No, actually, I heard this discussed earlier this evening on one of the shows on ESPN. I think it was College Football Today.
Okay.
And part of the initial agreement was that Tennessee had the right to withdraw that commitment at any time.
Really?
So he doesn't have any recourse there.
But you know what? Of course, I hope he worked that out with Urban Meyer, because I think he was on the Ohio State staff.
Defensive coordinator,
And chances are he can probably go back, but we don't know that. But, I mean, how would you feel? Seriously, if somebody said, hey, listen, you're our guy, they probably should have vetted this whole thing first. I'm sure somehow or other before Chip Kelly accepted that job and that plane ride, he had full commitment from UCLA. That's all I'm saying.
I think what the problem, this brings up the problem that we've talked about on this program from time to time, and it's social media was what really started to drive this. And, Tennessee can do whatever it is they want, and the fans are allowed to be upset because of, alleged improprieties or just being around the Penn State program when Jerry Sandusky was turning it into a pile of steaming you-know-what.
Yeah.
But, the bottom line is that this is how much social media tends to drive what goes on in sports, in real life, in news, you name it.
That didn't even exist.
And it kind of was the driving force, I think, behind this. Yeah. And I don't think, this goes to show, too, that if you're an athletic director at a school, you have to be aware of those kinds of things.
That was my next question. You think that athletic director is out of there? Seriously, do you think?
I would say so. Boy, if I'm the administration, it's like, how could you, A, seemingly miss this, or B, recognize it and not think it would be a problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
And that's, you're gone.
So Tennessee's going to be looking for a new AD, and of course they're still looking for a head coach. And they, quite honestly, if you were the next guy that they said, well, come in and we'll want to talk about it, would you take that job? No, seriously, having gone through that, having seen what happened to Schiano, would you be able to trust them? I mean, any further than you could throw these people?
If I'm a good person, I would trust them, because it's like, I know there's nothing in my closet that's going to disqualify me.
Okay.
Tennessee does have a good history other than this incident.
Well,
that
you've
just
had
happened.
basketball problems too, and you've had infractions before on football and basketball teams there. Obviously, I think the NCAA is still looking into some things on the basketball team. But having said that, do you really think that I could trust them? Or would you wait till they got a new AD? Obviously, this AD can't be calling anybody.
Yeah. Okay, if you're coming to be the head football coach,
I got to wait till they get a new AD or something.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, but I would trust Tennessee. Once you had that AD in there and you had a chance to personally vet the new AD that was brought in there, then it's like, and they may make you a legitimate offer, and you're a good guy, and you are. Nope, I'd trust them.
Okay.
Trust them.
Hey, it's Monday Night Sports Talk here on the airnetwork.net. Greg Banks along with Dave Shannon. Dave's in Elton live tonight via Skype. If you'd like to Skype us, just get on Skype, make a request to Greg Banks 3, or just call us up the old-fashioned way on your phone, 814-506-0609, 814-506-0609. And I may be a little remiss, Dave, and I didn't want to overlook these guys, but it was the end of the season. They're heading to a bowl. McSorley and Penn State routed Maryland 66-3, and I tell you, I was impressed with not only Trace McSorley, but Tommy Stevens, next man up as quarterback, responsible for 7 of Penn State's 9 touchdowns. It was incredible. I thought Maryland could give them a little bit more of a game, but hell, it wasn't even close, man.
No, it really wasn't, and it was good to see Tommy Stevens get in there for a real extended period and end up showing what kind of a quarterback he can be for the team. And one of the things that he did exceptionally well, and this is something, I was pleased that Matt Millen, Penn State alum, doing the game, ended up pointing out how important Trace McSorley, because Saquon Barkley got all the early press for that football team. But as Matt Millen correctly pointed out, if you want to talk about how this team got to where it is and how successful it is, you can't ignore Trace McSorley.
Oh, there's no doubt. And, we've seen Tommy Stevens come in from time to time, sort of like the utility guy when they, and when, especially
kind of like the old Cordell Stewart days at Pittsburgh.
Yeah, amazing. And, at one time, Hines Ward, who was a quarterback at Georgia, would be put in that role as well. You know what I'm saying? Oftentimes.
Right.
So he would be in the slot or he would be, behind center. It was just amazing. Stevens with his touchdowns, I think he had, I think he rushed for a career high of 113 yards. He had 3 touchdowns on 12 carries. That's amazing. And tight end Mike Gesicki got in the act because he caught 2 of McSorley's touchdowns. So overall, it was a great rout of Maryland, 66-3. We've been speculating now. Penn State was number 10 last week. Dave, I can't see them moving up more than maybe number 8 if they get there because there was just...
AP has them at 9.
At 9.
And let me see what USA Today still at 10.
Okay.
So,
because we're looking here, there was some movement. Obviously, pretty much blow up the top 4 from what it was last week because there are some major changes. And just off the top of my head, tomorrow night the committee gets together and they'll decide who the top 4 teams are. And, of course, they'll probably list Penn State at number 9, TCU at number 10, I think is how that's going to round out the top 10. But do you see it sort of like I do? Clemson should be number 1 this week. I would move probably either Auburn or Wisconsin up to number 2. No, let's put Oklahoma at number 2. Then I would go with Wisconsin 3 or 4, or vice versa. That would be my top 4 this week. Clemson, Oklahoma. I would go then with Wisconsin and then Auburn is how that would, basically Ohio State's kind of still sniffing the fringes and Penn State's down there around number 8, number 9. And like I said, TCU coming at number 10. What do you think?
Well, Ohio State is at 8 here in the AP, and they are 7 in the USA Today poll for this week.
Yeah.
However, that being said, I'll tell you what, if Wisconsin can put a whooping on Ohio State,
ooh, buddy,
okay, you can disrespect them for any number of reasons that you want to. Maybe that the west side of the Big Ten's not all that good, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you can go with all of that. But if Wisconsin goes head-to-head against Ohio State, which they do this week for the Big Ten championship, and if Wisconsin really puts a whooping on Ohio State, if Wisconsin is not the number one team in the nation, I don't care what that strength of schedule and all that other hoo-ha is, they are facing one of the better teams in college football. And if they are able to hand them a 14 to 20-point defeat, and you don't rank them number one, there is something rotten in Denmark, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'm interested because on Sunday, I believe, is the day that they actually come up with their final top 10 or, I'm trying to think of how that works.
I think it might be the following Sunday when they do that. Is it the following Sunday?
Because I know there are a lot of conference championship games this weekend, and that'll be very, very interesting. This will be certainly.
It may be this Sunday, Greg.
I think it is. I think it'll be happening this Sunday because they'll wrap up the season with the bowl games or at least the conference games on Saturday. But having said that, when this is all shaking out, who would you like to see in the top 4 this year? I mean, is Alabama even in there? Are they even in the discussion when it's all said and done?
Well, and here's the problem that's happened now because of Auburn beating them. But Auburn's 10-2, but how do you rank Alabama above Auburn because Auburn beat Alabama?
And the strength of schedules,
that's the dilemma that you've got in front of you now.
If you really think about it, Dave, who did Alabama actually beat that was even in the top 20? I think only LSU, is the only team that comes to mind.
I'm not even going to comment because I don't know that much about their schedule.
Yeah, well, that schedule I saw, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if you really did this, the only reason Alabama was sat at number 1 is because they were undefeated, and maybe supposedly their strength of schedule, but I didn't see the strength at all other than the win they had against LSU and the fact that Auburn plays teams that are basically top 5, top 10 teams. So that's why they would move up within the top 4. So it'll be interesting. I think Clemson's definitely going to be there. If Wisconsin wins out, Wisconsin ends up there in the top 4. I got to believe Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma probably will be there. Number 4, I really can't call that right now because I don't know,
Yeah, well, as long as Alabama, at 11-1, they're not going to change, right?
No.
So Auburn's going to be in the championship game. Excuse me. Yeah. And if Auburn is able to win that championship game and go 11-2, there's no way Alabama should be able to claw back into it.
I don't think so either. It'll be really interesting.
So, this Final Four that you see right now, the order may change, which would be a nice thing for Wisconsin if they could move up to number 1 because, your matchups go 1, 4, 2, 3.
Yeah, I think all the marbles will be told on Saturday evening, but they'll have the sort of another preliminary coming up tomorrow night as the committee gets together. They'll give us this week's top 4, and then the real deal happens on Sunday. That'll be amazing, man. Hey, Monday Night Sports Talk here on the airnetwork.net. Greg Banks along with Dave Shannon. Dave, we had a fantastic season with the Huntingdon Bearcats this year, all 12 of their games. We have them on thumb drive, and I'm letting people know if they want their copy, and we are getting requests for them, all they have to do is send us $50 money order or check to Greg Banks, P.O. Box 56, Huntingdon, PA 16652. That's Greg Banks, P.O. Box 56, Huntingdon, PA 16652. The Bearcat Boosters asked me to really hit it up because a bunch of their, fan base and the kids want copies of it. And I got to tell you, I traveled yesterday and actually stuck one in my USB port, and I listened to that first game you did with Chad in Mount Union, and I'm like, dude, it's like this guy had been doing it all along. And then as the season progressed, it just got a lot more fun. And so these kids will be able to stick that in their USB port or in their iPads and their computers and listen to it for the rest of their lives. Can you imagine being Ian Border as a senior this year and his mom getting one of those for him, and then he'll be able to play it for his kids 30 years ago, although the technology may change? Wouldn't that be wild? Your voice will be on there. My voice will be on there.
It's kind of amazing. It is kind of amazing. I know, and I was lucky enough to call the State College Little Lions state championship game in Hershey. And back in the day, the state of the art was CDs at that point. And I burned a copy of the CD. And the State College was in a District 6 championship game at St. Francis University.
Oh, okay.
And the head coach comes up and he goes, yeah, last night I listened to you doing the state championship game. And it's like, it really kind of blew me away. It's like, yeah, I have that. And that happened a year ago, blah, blah, blah. But no, Drew threw that in the night before and ended up listening to that game. So it's kind of amazing and humbling at the same time to realize that people hang on to those, and you never know when that may get popped back in again.
Exactly.
Interesting comment from Ian Border's mom, too.
Heather.
She said, sorry about you falling off the chair. She said, I held my breath on that play and almost passed out. Ian's mom was as emotionally, I guess, tied up in that game as I was.
There was a lot going on because, like I said, I was listening back here at the studio, and I thought, my God, somebody's scoring. And then somebody hit me up on Facebook and said, I hope he's all right. And then you explained that the wheel had fallen off the chair. And then, of course, one thing led to another. But it's a memorable point. If Heather Border remembers it, believe me, that's on the thumb drive, too.
Yay! No, it is a great thing, and it's kind of neat to know that you'll be remembered throughout the course of time.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, Bearcat lore and Bearcat history, Dave. You're a part of it, whether you want to be or not. Plus, let me mention the Bearcat Booster Club having their annual banquet coming up next Thursday night. Invitation only at the Smithfield Fire Hall. Dave, you've been invited. I've been invited. Chad States will be the guest speaker. It should be a great night. And as they honor the Bearcats, and I'm sure they'll be handing out awards to these kids because they deserve it. All of them actually deserve something. This is not one of those medals you get for just showing up. What do they call that? The participation medal?
Participation trophy.
You don't get one of those being a Bearcat this year because everybody was involved in that great season for sure, huh?
Absolutely. It was a great time to be there. One of the things that I got a kick out of as the season progressed, and the Bearcat players knew who I was by the end of the season, walking down on the field to interview Coach Hootie before the game. And the recognition that I would get from the players as I'd be making my way out onto the field was kind of neat to have the players on the team, just kind of nod their head at you or look at you, or whatever.
Oh, yeah. They acknowledged it because they actually went up there and they listened the next day. I was amazed because even last season we were being asked, well, when's that going to be up on your website? Because many of them, that's what they would do, would listen to it on the website. Then, of course, listen to the rebroadcast this year. But even the coach, Mike Hootie, seemed to soften up near the end of the season, Dave, as you would ask him questions. It was more than, yes, sir, no, sir. Not that I'm kidding, Mike, but, I mean, you're getting more verbal, and that's a cool thing because you're relaxing a little bit more. I don't think he gave that kind of information to television when they would talk to him. So you did good, Dave. You really did good, and I look forward to that banquet coming up next week. Now, having said that, the team that beat Huntingdon, Forest Hills, got knocked and got rocked by Sharon. So they're out of it this year. And I just want to touch on this a second, not that I'm making note of it, but I watched that BG game and Homer Center, and Homer Center snapped that BG 59 win streak that they had going on, so BG's out too.
Yeah. Hey, in the postseason, you never know what can and eventually will happen in those games.
Right.
And it's not surprising. First of all, Sharon's still a pretty decent sized town.
Oh yeah.
And so despite the recruit. No, I didn't say recruiting.
Yeah.
Despite the team that has been assembled by Bishop Guilfoyle,
right?
you're going up against, and this is one of those things too. One of the things I said at the end of
But Homer Center was a team that beat them. Now they were a big team, though. I mean, they matched BG, by the way.
Yeah.
Now Sharon actually outmatched Forest Hills. Yeah. So the further you go in this thing, the bigger these kids get.
Yeah. And that's why they're there.
Yeah.
That's why they have the kind of record that they have coming in and have advanced into the postseason. And, it's that's why these playoffs work, because you're getting into the cream of the crop the further you go into the playoffs. And bottom line is that, one thing I did say at the end of the Bearcats season there, as we were wrapping up in Mansion Park, is enjoy this, because this just doesn't come around that often in high school sports, because high school sports is an ebb and flow. You know, the athletes come along, and you're really blessed when you get this group of athletes that gel together. And they're all outstanding athletes, and you end up then with an outstanding football team. And enjoy it while it's there, because it may be gone again for I think next year will, as Chad said last week on the show, next year will still be a good season for the Bearcats. But then after that, you know, everything's kind of up in the air as to where things go from there.
Well, high school sports is so cyclical in that, you know, it happens, like you said. This was an 8th grade team that did real well years ago, and now look at them this year. And the weight room's going to be very important, too. Dave, there's somebody on the line with this. Hi, thanks for calling Monday Night Sports Talk. Who's this?
Hey, guys, Jeff Speck calling.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Hey, I heard the word recruitment just about stole the whole way out, and I want to throw the...
Nope. I retract that.
I know. Let's clear the record for everyone, though. Let's throw the red penalty, the red challenge flag out.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know how many of the... First of all, I've been asking people all year to give me the name of that Bishop Guilfoyle recruiter. I'm a little bit close to the program. No one's been able to do it yet, but I thought maybe knowledgeable people here might be able to.
Right. Hey, listen, I hope you don't take a personal affront to that when they talk about recruiting, because it's not just BG. Also, Bishop McCord has been called on it for many years. I think a lot of parochial schools have been called into that, and even now the charter schools down east in Philadelphia.
And here lies the problem, guys.
Right.
It's not the charter schools. It's not the parochial schools. It's the public schools who are at fault.
Okay.
Every athletic director, being at Huntingdon, my brother at Southern Huntingdon was an athletic director, and every school board member of a public school in this state is to blame for the situation the way it is.
I've heard you say
that. As long as the money keeps coming in, guess what? Nothing's going to change, and until these guys get some balls, except the athletic balls that are on the field and on the courts, and stand up to the PIAA, cut them off, it's not going to change. It needs change.
Well, do you think these athletic directors will collectively ever get together and hold their feet to the heat, Jeff? I don't see it.
No,
we've been talking about it for 15
the parents
years.
sit back and do nothing.
Yeah.
It ultimately comes down, if you're a parent of a public school, a school athlete, you know, you need to be in there. You need to show up in force at every school board meeting and demand that they take action to correct this inequity. And, you know, there's lots of solutions out there. And we're going to 6 divisions. What did that do? Absolutely nothing. It's still the public school students at the lower classifications who get screwed over. And all the parents and all the athletic directors and the school board directors of those school systems need to do is look in the mirror and they see the problem.
Well, one of the big things, Jeff, with going with the adding the additional classes into the mix is that how do you classify a school, be it a non-public school? How do you classify that by our class system that we have right now? Because
you don't do that. As I threw this out to Dr. Warner years ago, he was a halftime guest of mine when I was doing a Hollidaysburg and Upper St. Clair. I think it was the semifinal game at Mansion Park years ago, and Dr. Warner walked out of the booth on me when I suggested, hey, now like my son who transferred from Huntingdon to Bishop Guilfoyle this year.
Right.
My solution is that no matter what school district you come from, you carry that school's enrollment to the private or charter school that you go to.
Okay.
Amen.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this, because that has been such a bugaboo. And I tell you what, that's good. If my kid could get into a parochial school, which they did go to parochial school, by the way, in Altoona. But if I were in Huntingdon and I, of course, could get my kid into BG or maybe, what's that other school over in State College now, Dave, that just...
St. Joe's.
St. Joe's. Say we're all in the diocese and I can get... And it's going to benefit my child in the long run. Why wouldn't I want to do that? That's one side of it. The classification thing is another side of it. Now, I will say this, because, Dave, you know, we did the Game of the Week for many years, and I'll just bring up a couple of names, like the Hawkins brothers, who now went into the NFL, I think, you know, and they came out of Bishop McCord. Those kids were Baptists, And so the reality was we know that they just didn't decide to join Bishop McCourt, that things have been going on there for decades. So
right now here's an interesting fact from Bishop Guilfoyle this year, and I've had this discussion with many people from the outside of the Bishop Guilfoyle program.
Right.
Every kid, with the exception of one, and I personally know that one kid, every kid on the BG roster this year played in the Altoona Parochial Youth Football League.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
okay.
Be if that's from Williamsburg, be if that's from Hollidaysburg, Altoona. Well, I don't see when a kid starts at 8, 9 years old and lives in a parochial youth football league and continues on through the high school levels. I don't see how much you have an argument there. Then with my son, who's been raised Catholic, has been very involved in his community and in his church here in Huntingdon. Mm-hmm. He saw a sister who transferred to Bishop Guilfoyle from Hollidaysburg during her high school years. And I think he was always angry because she didn't play any sports of any sort.
Right.
And she transferred, and she had a great experience. And, quite frankly, it wasn't the Huntingdon football program or the BG program that had my son make his decision without any visit from any recruiter anywhere. He had some other issues that were going on at the local school and was looking for a better option. And there were some other things there also available because he was to a visit at Penn, so academically he was looking for a little more challenge that Bishop Guilfoyle could offer. And this weekend he was fortunate enough to have a visit with Pitt.
Oh, great!
He was out for the game on Saturday before Friday before their game Friday night, and had a visit to Pitt, and he loves that area too. But the thing needs fixed with the PIAA. It is wrong, but it's time for the athletic directors and the school board directors to stand up and fix it.
And you know what? You've talked about that before on Sports Talk, I know 5 years ago. So, now that you have a personal, of course, situation, I appreciate you being honest with us on that, Jeff. And all I've got to say about that is I had my eyes on number 71 the whole game. Yeah. That kid was working that whole freaking game, man. Did he ever get arrested at all?
He went up there. He was guaranteed nothing. He went up that, we have people in these positions. If you want something, you've got to work to get into it. And so whenever the first night, the first game of the season, he was going to be starting on the line on defense.
Wow.
And after the first series, starting the second series on offense, he's played both ways all season long.
Okay, well, you know what? It's weird because I kept watching him. I said, I know that kid. And then I thought, when does he ever get off the field? I never saw him leave the field.
Special teams. He's not a speedster on special teams.
So no, but still. But it's a good luck to Bryant in the future, of course, as he moves on in his career. And I know in order to get to those D1 schools, you got to get noticed. And that's a great place to be noticed at BG, I would say.
Like I said, he was down to Penn for an official visit earlier in the season, and you're talking Ivy League. He sure as hell didn't get that smart spark from me.
I hear that. Hey, my son went to Colgate, and he didn't get it from me either, Then he went on to Duke, and I'm like, well, he got his looks from me, but he got that smart stuff from his mother.
That's what I say. If he's going on my name, it's just my good looks.
I hear you. Hey, Dave, anything you want to add before we let Jeff go, man? I appreciate it, dude.
No, Jeff made a really good point.
Clear.
And
he said it before, years ago.
I'm glad that I brought the word up that inspired his call.
Well, you know what?
It's a problem, guys. It needs fixed, and people need to do more than talk about it. It's time to pick up and go get some action, because I'm a product of the public schools, and I saw my brother with the Southern Huntingdon Lady Rockets meet up with the Villa Marias whenever they were introducing kids. And from Columbus, Ohio. From Clinton, Ohio.
Yeah, I remember that.
Playing on Villa Marias. So,
that's crazy stuff.
That's a problem. It needs fixed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, well, listen, I appreciate it, man. But listen, I sent you out a note. Are we going to do that Christmas tree lighting thing this year?
Yeah, I just saw that when I tuned up my computer here to listen to Sports Talk tonight, so I think we'll be good for that coming up. What's that, the 8th?
Yeah, the 8th. Dee Dee just emailed me, Mayor Dee Dee Brown. I guess on her way out, she wants us to do that and also the parade. So you and I will talk about that, okay?
All right, good enough. Keep the sports up.
All right, thank you, man. Thanks for calling in. Jeff Speck
on
Monday Night Sports Talk. Thanks, Jeff.
Hey, take care, guys.
Have a good night. Dave Shannon, by the way, with me. Dave, can we take a break, and then I'll be back for 5 minutes? I need to take this break real quick.
Go for it.
All right. We'll be back with more Monday Night Sports Talk in just a moment. The Huntingdon Moose Family Center 223 is the heart of the community with loads of activities all year round. The Huntingdon Moose Family Center 223 proudly sponsors social events for members and their guests, plus you can enjoy their Friday food specials beginning at 5 p.m. every Friday. Saturday entertainment, plus check our website for other exciting upcoming events all year round. There's always something happening at the Huntingdon Moose Family Center 223, the heart of the community. Join us today.
Sometimes facts are hard to face. Statistics show that obesity is a problem in the United States, and it's not getting any better. At Simone Family Chiropractic, we understand this problem. We also know that obesity leads to very serious health problems later in life. There is a way to cleanse your body and get back to optimum health. It is called the Doctor-Supervised Chirothin System, and it teaches you how and what to eat in the real world. Call us at Simone Family Chiropractic at 814-643-2616, or stop in and see us at 613 Washington Street in Huntingdon, across from All American Pizza, or find us on Facebook.
DC Goodman & Sons and the Goodman family are committed and dedicated to excellence by supporting quality education and athletics for all youth of Huntingdon County. For over 3 generations, DC Goodman & Sons and their staff of quality tradesmen have provided excellent service in the installation of plumbing, mechanical and industrial piping, electrical, and fire sprinkler systems. Residential services are also available. DC Goodman & Sons and the Goodman family will continue to serve the community, and thank you for your support. The Goodman family wishes you the best to all area students in your pursuit of excellence. All-American Pizza and Subs in downtown Huntingdon offers up the family meal deal with a large one-topping pizza, a dozen wings, and a 2-liter Pepsi product for only $21.99. All-American also presents Double Punch Month, where you can save big on a large sub or lunch special during the month of November. Stop by All-American Pizza and Subs at 612 Washington Street in downtown Huntingdon, home of the Bearcat Sub. Call 643-0222 for deliveries, open until 9 p.m., closed Monday.
Call Austin Smith Heating and Plumbing for affordable heating, plumbing, and drain cleaning services in Huntingdon. Count on 12 years of insured excellent service when it comes to heating, plumbing, ventilation, and drain cleaning. Call Austin Smith Heating and Plumbing, available evenings and weekends at an affordable rate. Call 814-506-5128. That's 506-5128 for Austin Smith Heating and Plumbing in Huntingdon. Monday Night Sports Talk on the airnetwork.net. Greg Banks in the studio. Dave Shannon live in Altoona tonight. Want to thank Jeff Speck for joining us and clarifying some things when it came to perhaps high school recruitment. We've kind of been touching on that all this season of Sports Talk Day. But Jeff actually said that, I think it was 5 years ago. He joined us on the show about how you rectify that problem. So, again, I want to thank him for clarifying it. And he's a parent of a child who goes to parochial school. So,
that was good to hear his perspective, and also that he brought that up to the PIAA director.
Oh, yeah, I remember Warner, I think his name was, wasn't it, at one time? Yeah.
Yeah, and, met with walking out. Well, and, of course, that's kind of the to a degree, it's the PIAA's MO, but I think Jeff's biggest point was you need to go to your school board meetings and get your school boards to start to push for changes. I think if every school board of every public school in the state of Pennsylvania would go to the PIAA, there isn't. You got to pay attention to that. Hey, you have to be unified, though, in what you do.
Yeah, you got to pay attention because they pay a lot of money, these schools, to be involved in that PIAA, which, by the way, is a nonprofit organization. If you remember, then Senator Bob Jubileer took them to task, Dave. I guess, it's been almost 15, 20 years ago when he tried to break up that little fiefdom they had down there in Hershey. And they still reign to this day. They just continue to add more classifications, which means they bring in more money. And I don't know, man. I think you and I ought to become a nonprofit. I'm already broke. I'm already broke now.
We are, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. Hey, before we wrap things up, we're going to go a little long tonight. Penguins end that losing streak by beating Tampa. Sid Crosby and Phil Kessel came through for the Penguins. I may have missed a game along the weekend, Dave. Clear me up on what's happening. I know the Penguins are playing tonight.
Yeah, and they're currently ahead 1-0 over the Flyers. Here's the bottom line. If the playoffs were held today, the Penguins would not be in it.
That's what I'm hearing, yeah.
They are superseded by the New York Rangers, who played less games but have more points than the Penguins do.
Right.
So this stretch of lack of wins and what have you has really been a problem. A lot of people have talked about the home road thing. Well, I'll tell you what, I was just as we were in commercial trying to go over the Penguins schedule. And from this point henceforth, they have a nice 5-game homestand coming up.
Right.
And after that, though, it starts to get back into about a 50-50 mix. That's what you're going to have. You're going to have half your games at home, half on the road.
Right.
Time to get ready to face the music. You got to be ready for that stuff and be able to win on the road. There have been times when the Penguins have been a better team on the road than they have been at home. Mm-hmm. But this year, thank goodness they've had the kind of record they have at home. And we'll see how that plays out over the course of time.
How much does it bother you whenever they get into something like a 3-game losing streak, though? Like they just came through before that win against Tampa Bay.
Not necessarily. If it had continued to go on, then, you start to question what's going to happen between now and the end of the season. Mm-hmm. But they did stop it. I thought they played a really good game against Tampa. They did some things. And here's one of the things that has haunted this team since the season began. They do not come out at the beginning of a game and start full speed.
Right, okay.
Now, they did against Tampa on Saturday, and you walk in at the end of one period and you're ahead 3-0. I guess you did come out and start the game pretty well.
Yeah.
But tonight they come out in the first period. They played pretty even, if not a little bit better than the Flyers so far. Jake Gensel with a goal. They're ahead 1-0. This is what they need to start to do, is to come out and set the tone for the game and continue to maintain that through 3 periods of hockey. And they have the horses to do that.
Yeah,
they have the team that can do that.
I was going to ask you, are they lacking the fire from the get-go, or is it a matter of these guys are still getting familiar with these lines now? I would think by now, here it is after, 3 months into the season, you'd have to be getting pretty comfortable with the line that you're working with.
There's been some things that have happened that have changed things around. For example, Matt Hunwick went out, a key new defenseman that the team brought on, and he was out until just last week.
All right.
And, of course, the first game back, he ends up scoring a goal. So now there's a new guy out there on defense. Evgeny Malkin goes down. He's with a quote-unquote upper body injury, still out for the Penguins. We'll see how long that lasts. And, of course, that makes all these changes that occur. As a matter of fact, Jake Gensel got elevated to being a center on the number 2 line on the team because of Malkin going out.
Right.
They thought, well, okay, here's your chance. Show us what you got. If there's any one player that I would single out as someone that I'm disappointed in, that I thought maybe could have brought something to the game. You got to remember, too, a lot of the Penguins' success in previous years have been by the lower lines, the 3rd and 4th lines.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that we don't have is Riley Sheahan. No matter what somebody wants to tell me about that guy, he couldn't find a goal. If it was wrapped, put under a tree, and it had a name tag with his name on it, he still couldn't find it. I just don't like Riley Sheahan. He doesn't seem to fit in on the team per se.
Yeah.
He certainly doesn't bring anything to it as far as firepower goes. He scored a goal, and that was a shorthanded goal.
Hey, well, usually in December,
not shorthanded, but I'm sorry, an empty net goal.
Right. Usually in December, the team has in the past, anyhow, and maybe last year, brought some guys up from Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. Maybe for a time. Do you see any of that happening? And who would you bring up at this point? Maybe just kind of get a little relief, or maybe something a little bit different on the ice.
About the best thing you could do at this point is bring up one of the centermen that's playing really well for Scranton Wilkes-Barre at this point and see if they're able to bring that same kind of success into the NHL. That's never an easy thing to do.
No.
And to a degree, it's a little bit like baseball. From the standpoint of you may come up and be, successful right out of the box, But to keep that going, it takes something. And one of the guys that's been able to do, Jake Gensel is a guy that's been able to do that.
Remember his fabulous opening game?
Yeah, we were doing Monday Night Sports Talk, as a matter of fact.
And what he
night.
did, score like 3 that night or something? It was amazing. Yeah, so Gensel, I think that was a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. So that's crazy. So what's the schedule look like this week? They're on the ice tonight, and then what do we got with the Penguins for the rest of the
Back-to-backs
weekend?
Against Buffalo this week, Friday,
really?
Saturday.
Okay.
And first one is in Buffalo on Friday, and then at Pittsburgh on Saturday.
All right, come on home.
So they have not performed well in back-to-backs. In this case, this past week, they lost to Boston on Friday, but then beat Tampa on Saturday. So,
I was going to say, how bad are those back-to-backs? I mean, sleep-wise, I know you love to sleep.
Well, it was good for the Penguins in this one Saturday, Greg, because they played Boston at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so that got them plenty of time to get back to Pittsburgh and have a good night's sleep in their own bed before they played Saturday evening against Tampa. So, no, that one works out okay. But normally what you're talking about, you get done, you get out of the arena, what is it, 11 o'clock, something like that.
Yeah.
And if you're on the road, then you're hopping on a plane, you're headed home. You get home 3 o'clock in the morning, and then you're going to play again tomorrow night. Normally, you got this routine of doing this morning skate, and the coach is going to want you to be there. So it is tough.
It's grueling.
One of the things that usually happens is the goalies get rested from one game to the next. Whoever starts the first game, the backup goalie will start the second game.
Gets the gig the next night. So, we wish the Penguins the best of luck as they proceed through the season. As Dave mentioned, though, at the beginning of this conversation, if we were to have the playoffs tonight, chances are Penguins wouldn't make it. You know what I'm saying? So, and that would be a rarity in itself, Dave. Seriously, after the last couple of seasons these guys have had, it would be, I don't know.
Let's see how the drive goes toward the end of December. We can start to, if they're still kind of in the doldrums here at the end of December, then we can start to speculate about things. But just remember this, you've got 3 more months of hockey after that. You've got January, February, March, and 3 games in April that they'll play. So, even though that may be the case, it's still, you can still look at if they're on an upward trend, then the Pens are going to be back in the playoffs, and they should be. They still have that talent there, and I think as time goes on, they'll continue. I think they're still getting used to Recchi. I hate to point to assistant coaches as a potential major difference, but I just saw the way these guys gelled around Tocchet, and they're slowly warming to Mark Recchi. But one thing I saw the other night that just blew me away was Jake Gensel. At the it was coming toward the end of the game, and they had the goalie pulled, and you start to plan who's going to be where and who should take shots and what have you. And Jake Gensel, it was Mark Recchi who's explaining this, because that's one of his duties as an assistant under Mike Sullivan. He's got the whiteboard out, he's planning it out. Jake Gensel, who was on the ice at the time, skated right by. Didn't even stop to listen.
Didn't he really?
And it was okay, I'm sure that was addressed immediately after the game.
I'm sure they talked about that in the locker room.
Yeah, but I will say this much. Jake did not do that in any game after that. So, yeah, it's but like I say, I think they're slowly warming to Recchi. He's a different guy than what Rick Tocchet was, for sure.
All right. Well, best of luck to the Penguins. Hey, Dave, I didn't know if you were aware, but we also carry Penguins, or I should say Pittsburgh Panther basketball. And, when I feel like it, I guess I'll feel like it tomorrow night when they play somebody. I have no idea. I don't have the schedule here. But if you love basketball and you want to follow the Pitt Panthers, tune in tomorrow night around 7 o'clock. Have you heard any of the broadcast, by the way?
No, I'm not, but I did watch Penn State hand them their lunch up in New York.
Well, listen, when you listen to the radio broadcast, Bill Hillgrove, the vaunted veteran, he's still on the air, but Dick Grote is the color analyst. Dick Grote has to be, or is that Bill Mazeroski? It's one of the former Pirates. He's been doing it for about 30 years, and the guy sounds...
it's Dick Grote.
Well, Dick sounds like he's about 90. Oh, my God. It's like listening to our friend Radio Ron do a football game. Well, maybe not that radio, Ron. You know the one I'm talking about.
That was Greg's comment, Ron, not mine.
That's my fault. Don't be confused. There's two of these radio Rons. This is the local one I'm talking about. Chances are he's not listening. Anyhow, Dave Shannon, thank you, man, for being on the air. And, Jeff, I don't take any of that as a personal affront. I appreciate you tuning in and, of course, calling us. Everybody is fair game. Call us up, 814-506-0609. Next Monday night, we'll do it again on Monday Night Sports Talk. Thank you, Dave Shannon. Have a good night, man.
All right. Good night, Greg.